Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and last night I held my first OP09 One Piece tournament, which was a lot of fun. We had over 100 players, 7 rounds of Swiss into this top 16 that we see here today. And a couple of quick things before we get started. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We're going to make a lot of OP09 content as we get it, and I think this is going to be a pretty big format as well. And also, if you guys want to see any of the deck lists on my website, you can check them out on Eggman Events. This is the only OP09 one on there right now, but we'll be continuing to add them as we go. And we still have a couple of OP08 ones as that kind of format ends as well. But jumping on into this event, I also do want to thank Zell for being my commentator, as well as CJ and Risu for being the judges for this event. I would not be able to run this without them. It was super smooth. It went really fast, and it's really tricky to run 7 rounds on a Tuesday night, but they were able to make it happen, and I really appreciate them for that as well. But this was, again, held last night, 128 players, 7 rounds of Swiss best of 1, and in that top 16, we did have 5 Donquixote Doflamingos, 3 Lucci, 2 Teach, 1 Bonney, which ended up winning the entire thing, 1 Shanks, 1 of the OP09 Luffy, 1 of the Star Deck 10 Luffy, a Smoker, and a Nami. So obviously I know the kind of idea for this event was just kind of like a super locals, right? 100 players is a lot, but it's not as much as like the 500 or 1,000 player events that we have. But I do think this is a good kind of snapshot of what we can expect for the next couple of weeks. Doflamingo, I think, is one of the best decks in the game right now. It was really good in OP08, and it didn't really change going into OP09 for what you have to do for the deck, which means I think on day one, a lot more people are going to be better at Dofi than just picking up either, the Teach or like the Shanks and stuff. So I do think that does kind of impact what people are playing and how they play it. And we can also see the leader breakdown too. We did have 25 people on Dofi, 19 people on Shanks, 16 on Teach, 11 of the OP05 Luffy, which ended up not topping, surprisingly enough, 9 Lucci, 9 Nami, 7 of the OP09 Luffy, which is the one that did top, 5 Betty, and then 27 others. So a good amount of variety, and these are mostly, as you can tell, new leaders that weren't really popular in OP08, right? Obviously we have Dofi, we have like Rob Lucci, but we don't see a lot of Nami or of Bonney, a lot of Anel. There's only one player who brought BY Luffy, which I'm a little bit surprised about, because I still think that deck's kind of good for this format. But it was really interesting to see what this kind of player pool looked like and what people brought as well. But we are going to go over the top placing list for each one of these leaders. We did have 9 different leaders top this event, with 6 different ones in the top 8, which I think is really good for diversity as well. But we're going to jump on into it to our first place, which is Miguel with their copy of Bonney. I wasn't expecting Bonney to win this one. I think a lot of other people were in the same boat, but I do like the adjustments made for this deck for the current format, specifically the re-addition of Zoro in this deck. I think that a lot of people were afraid of Rob Lucci. They could remove this card so easily, and you just weren't able to do anything about it. But now you can kind of play it, and now like Blackbeard is pretty popular, but they can only kind of stun it. They don't really have a consistent way to remove this card. Doflamingo doesn't really have a great way to remove this card. There's just a lot of decks that have to respect how good this Zoro can be, and I think it stays on board a little bit more successfully too. So I do like the re-addition of that card there. Other than that, it's just kind of more of the similar pieces we've been seeing. It's interesting to see 4-drop Urouge has just left the deck completely. It had a lot of bad interaction with how the Doflamingo matchup went, and with everything else, it just left. So our only way to kind of get Dawn back at the end of the turn is with Cavendish, but this is a really good card for us, and we do like we play it anyway, so I think that's fine. We also do have a couple more blockers with 4 Rosante, 2 copies of Killer, which is a more of a tech ad, which does help you there. We're still playing the Useless Kid. We are playing still the 7-drop Pody as well, and I think there's just a lot going on with there are a lot of good tech choices too. We know this 9-drop Shanks is still pretty good too, even if it isn't on play against like a Blackbeard deck. So in general, I think this deck was worked pretty good, but I also will say this is a moderately optimized deck into a meta of people trying new things. So I'd be interesting to see how Bonney continues to do as we get into more of the official events. But I think this is a really good placement, and congratulations to Miguel for winning it with Bonney. And then our runner-up is Shanks. And again, Shanks was pretty popular into this event. It was the second most popular leader that we had, with 19 copies of it, and only one of them was able to get into that top 16 status. So this deck has been pretty popular for a lot of people. I thought I would like it a little bit more. I thought I would kind of transfer from Marco to Shanks a little bit, but I haven't really enjoyed it as much as I thought it was, just because it is a little bit clunky, right? We are running 20 cards that have no counter, which is pretty scary. Technically 19 because one of them is going to be Bad Manners Kit Course, but the fact that we just have all these cards that we can't combo with, it's so easy for you to be stuck with all these cards in your hand at the late game, right? I mean, yes, Silvers is a really good card, right? Dragon is a really good card. The Shanks is a really good card. Both the the OP06 one as well as the new OP09 one. And then we also are running 2 copies of Goldie Roger, the new secret rare from OP09, which I think this card is good in a lot of situations. There's some time, like, you just kind of build a really wide board, and then eventually your opponent just tries to block her up, and then if they hit you down to 0 life and you're able to sustain at that, you can just kind of crack back the game with the Goldie Roger. So I do think the card is good, and there's some great abilities with it, but the fact that it's just tough for me because you do want to play like a big drop at the end of the game every turn, but there's no real consistency at times, right? We just kind of have to hard draw it. We don't have any ways to really draw outside of the Silver's Rayleigh, which this doesn't automatically get a card draw either, because it is a a 5k or more of, there are 2 copies of 5ks or more on your opponent's board to be able to get the draw 2 trash one, so that doesn't always happen, and it's just like a really interesting build in general. But I do like the addition of Ben Beckman. This is a super strong card for the deck and just red in general. Being able to trash something with 6k power or less for free, but also means it gets around any on KO abilities and everything. Like this has been a really strong card, and I do like having that one in there. But other than that, and then one more thing, and then the Red Hawk, which has been I think pretty popular for most builds. This just lets you get some like early control in the early game. Lets you trade some bodies without taking damage, and if you're able to keep like a really healthy life total with Shanks in the early game, then that just means that you can survive to the end game and just play like a big body every turn. So it makes sense. I just fear for the consistency from this deck sometimes, because it is a lot of just like non-counters. But I do like you get the deck is really cool when you get through it. And I think the last thing I'd say is that people are kind of still adjusting to this ability of the once per turn giving something minus 1k. When people are more comfortable with it, I think Shanks will have a little bit more of a harder time, because people will know like the right numbers to attack and how to attack Shanks to make his leader effect as bad as possible. It's still a good effect, but being able to play around it is going to be really huge too. But this is the build from Georgios, and congratulations for the second place with Shanks being the only one to get there, and I'm looking forward to seeing more Shanks in the future too. All right, next up we've got Doflamingo. So this is Eduard's version of the deck, and clearly like not a lot has changed, if anything, for this deck into this meta. It was very present in OP08 once it got the new star deck cards for it. I think the only kind of changes and adjustments are like a couple more copies of Jozu in particular. I do see quite a few builds that run like the 10-drop Kaido, and get those additional top end, but I think this deck is just great. It's just, there's so many games that I was able to see from our live stream as well that it was just like they just went off. It just went, oh, I had double Jinbei, and then I had like 5 bodies on board, right? The deck can still do that really consistently, and it's just really tough for this deck to lose steam in the early game, which some decks just don't really have a way to do anything with it. But I think the only thing I would say is that I would be interested to trying some red rocks in the build. There are just some like bigger bodies that need to be removed sometimes. I don't think Raging Tiger is good outside of maybe the mirror match, which you will see pretty often, but that's kind of like my only critique, is that maybe it's time to try some red rocks instead of the Raging Tiger, see if one's better or not. But I don't think either or is the wrong decision too. But this is the build from Eduard, and congratulations for their top with the Doflamingo. All right, next up you've got Rob Lucci, which this deck is still viable, I think, in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people were like, oh, Marshall.D.Teach is around, it's going to be tough for this deck, we're going to have a bad time. And I don't think that's strictly the case, but it is a bit of a tougher matchup for you. But on the flip side, it looks like, for the time being, we'll see if that keeps true, our previous worst matchup, BY Luffy, is at least out of the meta. So because of that, I do think some people will probably go back to Rob Lucci when they feel that it is still safe for it. And there are some adjustments that are in this build particularly that does help into that matchup. The primary example is the Kaido. So you may discard 1 card from your hand if this character is played this turn, place up to 1 of your opponent's 7 cost or lower characters in their trash, then your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. So you can use this to get rid of a 10 cost Teach, even if your opponent like discard a card, and you make sure that they discard a card too. You do need to use either a Tempest Kick are in Ice Age, but that's pretty easy for you on Lucci. So being able to do that just means that you have ways to answer 10-drop Teach, which most decks really don't. They just have to sit at it and recognize and respect that it's a 10k or a 10-drop 12k blocker that you can't really do anything with. So you can also do a similar thing with Jack as well, right? You do need a little bit more cost reduction, so you need like double Tempest Kick and Leader Effect, which will happen. You also are running 2 copies of the Finger Pistol too. This is obviously played in Teach as well, but this does get around the on-play negation effects, and you are in Archetype with this one since this is a Cypher Pole 9-1. So in general, I do like the adjustments made for this build in particular, being able to not auto-lose to Teach, have ways to interact with them and get there too. But obviously, like Echo Moria doesn't do a lot if you get your on-plays off, but there's still just a lot of other decks that exist in this meta that I think Rob Lucci still protects and checks, and I do expect more people to kind of go back to Rob Lucci once they get a little bit more familiar with this meta. So I don't think it's out, even though Teach is a tough matchup. I don't think it's impossible, and it can definitely survive it as well. But this is the build here from Adrian, and congratulations for their top with Rob Lucci. And then next up, we do have the Marshall.D.Teach. This is the one that we've been talking about all day. This deck is pretty present, right? It was the second most played deck. The third most played deck, with Shanks being the second most and 16 people on the Teach. But we are, this is a deck everyone's kind of aware with. We don't have a lot of diversity, I feel like, in deck building either, mostly because we do just need to, there's just so much of our Blackbeard Pirate cards that have to run in the first place that it's a little bit tougher to find some room. But there are some kind of neat tech choices that I've seen in this one I don't see in many others. Jack has been like a, hit or miss for a lot of people. I think Kaido 9-drop, as we saw in the previous one, is, but the fact that these are activate mains means we do get around the leader negation, so we can play it in this deck too. We are playing some Tempest Kicks, which we actually do fill up our trash pretty quickly. The fact that we have so many cards that just put them in the trash. We want to put cards in the trash for our Burgess as well. Those are just really good resources, so I do like the addition for that too. We do obviously have our 10-drop Marshall.D.Teach. This is probably one of the best cards in the game right now when paired with our leader, and being able to this just gets out of like 2 attacks on the turn it's played, which is absurd. And then you can attack with it like a 12k next turn. This is really, really good. And like 10 drops are kind of hit or miss in the fact that it is your entire turn, but if it's a situation where if you play 2 in a row, it wins you the game, like we've seen with like 10-drop Lin, we've seen it with Doflamingo 10-drop, right? I think Teach is in the same kind of spot where you can just, if you chain these together, you just win the game because you just put so much pressure out. You have so much, like, you're not afraid of losing the game, and then you have so much pressure to kind of win it as well. So only other thing I'll say is that, yeah, Laboon is in here. I know this is a pretty expensive card right now due to it being an expansion booster set, which is in the expansion booster, which was just, a little bit smaller of a print run. But I do think it's kind of needed. If you need at least 2, in my mind, if you have any less than that, it's going to be tough to play this deck optimally. But it is unfortunately present because I think it's the most expensive card for this deck. But I'll also say the rest of the deck I think is pretty cheap, since we are just playing a bunch of rares and commons. Our only actual super rare is the Marshall.D.Teach, and then the Jack, which I think the Jacks are pretty cheap right now too. But this is the build here for Teach. There are a couple builds as well. Congratulations to JT for finishing with the Teach as well. And again, I don't think there's going to be a lot of build diversity. There are some room for tech choices, but this is going to be what the deck's going to look like for most people. So you should probably study up a little bit as well. But there we go there. And then next up, we've got this is our last X1 that we're going to look at. It's going to be Mark with their copy of the OP09 Monkey.D.Luffy. And I personally really like this deck. This is one of my favorite decks in this meta right now. It's really, really cool. I like the idea that we can like ramp back up very quickly. If you guys don't know what the abilities for this leader are, is 1 Don times 1. Your leader has +1 cost. So your characters have +1 cost. So this is like the Star Deck 14 Luffy ability. But then also your turn once per turn, when 2 or more cards are returned to your Dawn deck from play, set up to 1 from your Dawn as active, and then up to 1 from your Dawn deck as rested. So being able to use this to like every time like you lose Dawn, you get 2 back, which is really nice. Or sorry, 2 or more Dawn, you get 2 back, which is cool. Which means we have a lot of abilities such as like the Ronor Zoro, being able to use this to return 2 Dawn, and then you get to get 1 back as active, and then your leader gets 1 back. So this is a ramp that's almost specifically only for this leader without, saying so. I do also like the ability to get +1 cost. We can play this Sanji. So if we're at 6 Dawn, we put 1 in our leader, play this, it's going to be a 6 cost, and we get rid of a 5. And then our top end, we are playing the Sanji blocker, the promo Zoro, which is the banish one, Gecko Moria, and then also the Kaido and Luffy. So really interesting to see no copies of Linlin, which I really like that card in this deck at times since it does, recover us 1 life. I also don't see any of the Luffy Taro, which that one I think has been a little bit less popular outside of like the purple Luffy, but you could run it in this build. We're not playing any of the Sanji super rares either, which lets you just be a rush card. So like this is a really interesting build from what I've seen previously. I will say I wasn't really respecting how quickly you could get back up to 10 Dawn in this leader with this one. So the idea, until I saw it in play, so you play this for 10, you use your leader ability to get 2 back, and then one of them is active, so you use your Luffy effect to go from 2 to 3. You start your next turn, you go to 5, and then you can use your Luffy effect to go from 5 to 6. And then you're like already halfway there, right? Like it's the fact that you pretty much did like a Kaido effect, right? A Dawn -5 instead, but it's with this Luffy, you just don't get as punished by like losing 10 Dawn, which I think is really interesting. So that aside, I think this deck is in a good spot. There's going to be a lot of cool builds. I think purple and black is like a really unexplored color combination, and I'd be really interested to see what it looks like in the future too. But that's going to be it for this one, and congratulations to Mark for their finish with the black and purple Luffy. All right, next up we've got the Star Deck 10 Luffy, and I've been really enjoying the idea of like what's the next best red and purple leader since Trafalgar Law has left the meta. So this is Noah's version of the build here. We do get just a lot of good cards that came out of this set. I didn't really mention it on the previous side, but Gum Gum Giant is a really great card. Dawn -2, trash 1 card from your hand. If your leader has a Straw Hat crew type, you get to give this +4K and then draw cards. So you do lose 2 Dawn, but you don't lose card advantage by getting out of and give yourself a +4, right? This is a super solid card and also gets you card cycle. As long as you can like afford the Dawn -2, which you generally can in the late game, you just get some really good advantage, which is really cool to see. But then we do just kind of focus on the ramp. We have the Zoro, we have the Bon and Clay. If we're playing against Teach, it's nice to have also the lead performer Disaster, because that does let us get that ramp as well. And then we do have like the new gates. We have the useless Captain Kidd, which when attacking can't get negated by the new gate leader. It does mean, or the Teach leader, they can play 10 drop to prevent it from attacking, right? But this being able to become a 7K leader pretty consistently and quickly, I think is good. We have the Yasop, which is kind of the same ability. On play, gives something +1K. So being able to become we're really focusing on being the biggest leader we can get into the late game really consistently. And then we also have like the new Luffy, which we're able to get some advantage for, and the Goldie Roger as kind of our finisher, since we get to 0 life pretty quickly because of just having 3 to begin with, and being able to play this out and make it so your opponent can't block anything, I think is really strong. So I would like to play like a copy or two of like the secret rare 10 drop Luffy as mentioned in the other one, but I think this is a really interesting build of the deck. It's a little bit kind of slower and more control heavy, and just kind of the idea of like, I'm going to build a lot of big bodies, and then like if you hit me down to 0, then I'll play my Goldie Roger, turn off all of your blockers, and then I have all these attacks that you have to respect too. So I think that's a really cool game plan. It looked like it worked out very well. And congratulations to Noah for their finish with this Luffy. And then next up we have Smoker, which Smoker's been doing moderately good in Japan for the end of their OP09 meta. And it's been one of my favorite decks for this, right? The fact that we do have like this Tashigi that we've been talking about forever since it came out of the Star deck, I think is really great. But it's just like a good Navy deck that I don't think it's broken like Sakazuki Blue Black was, but we get so much. The engine for Navy is so strong right now that we get so many good searchable targets and some great gameplay with it too. So kind of the way that it diversifies itself from Rob Lucci is that we are running the Navy stuff. We also are playing like a single copy of Sakazuki, which is really good. This deck does have to respect the power of Teach too, though, since a lot of our effects are on plays. We can get some removals from like Brook are with that effect are even like Tashigi only gets the on play of giving something 4 or less, but if you are able to give something enough reduction, you can still activate main, get rid of something. So if we do like double Ice Age, we could then play Tashigi and get rid of a Teach, which is interesting. I don't know if it's good, but it's interesting that you could do that as well. So you don't have to like the cost reduction is not as needed. We could also use it in conjunction with this Tashigi that we play it out, activate main, give something -2. So there are ways to interact with reduction out around Teach in this deck too. Clearly, you also have the Kaido, but I do want to mention that the Tashigi does the activate main is the good effect. The on play cost reduction is good, but the activate main is really what sets it apart. So being able to do that, even if you're around like the Marshall.D.Teach leader effect, you can still get some great effects with it. So it's going to be interesting to see how Smoker does in the next little bit. I think the deck is a lot of fun, and congratulations to Matthew for getting their finish there. And then lastly, we do have Nami. So this is Luis's version, sneaking into 16th place with it. And we did actually get a piece of support with OP09 for Nami. It is this this one drop here. So when attacking, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 blue event card and put it in your hand, then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. So you do have to attack with it, which is a little bit tough to do consistently with it, but just a draw card, a consistency card to find any of your pieces. This can find like Sanji's Pilaf, which then you'd be able to play immediately, right? I think that's very, very strong. I do think that like the deck just worries about the blue event cards in the first place. The only issue with this is that it can like bottom deck like your Kaya's or something, which you don't really want to see. Like Kaya's probably the second most important card in your deck. But being able to just find, there's just so many good events that you can find with it that I think you're in a good spot. So other than that, we are playing like Boodle as a blocker. We are playing a couple copies of Marguerite, and then also the Usopp swag copy of this one, the bane of my existence. But this, I can definitely see this sometimes popping up and being able to get you there too. But I do think this deck is in a good spot right now too. There's a lot of people on it, more than I was expecting. We did have full 9 people on it, which I thought was remarkable. And I don't know, we'll see Nami still. I think that we can have some potentially good matchups against stuff like Teach as well. And this is going to be interesting to see how it does in the next little bit too. But this is Luis's build of the deck, and that's going to be it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm looking forward to the rest of OP09. This is just the beginning of it, and I know we've got a lot more events in the future too. So if you don't want to miss them, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Once again, I do appreciate to everyone who came out for this event too. Look forward to more in 2025, and that's going to be it for me. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.